Today we're going to be going over my thoughts on Hollow Knight Silksong. Now obviously there are going to be hella spoilers. I'm going to be talking about the entire game in this video, and that includes, spoiler alert, all 3 acts. I have 100% of the game, and I am on my way to platinuming the game on PlayStation. I just need the 30-hour speedrun achievement, which I am currently working on at the moment. But I think it's definitive to say that I have really and thoroughly played through this game a lot. I already have 2 fully complete playthroughs, working on my 3rd, which is going to be the speed run, and I'll eventually get to a Steel Soul run as well. So these are my thoughts on Hollow Knight Silksong. First off, I just want to say I've waited a long time. We've all waited a long time for this game, and it was definitely worth the wait. I'm so glad I held out hope for this game. It may have been a long road, the Silk sanity was definitely upon me, but when you just see how big and dense this game is, it is definitely worth the wait. It is, in my opinion, probably the closest we're ever going to get to a perfect game. There could be a few tweaks here and there, but other than that, this game is incredible. Hollow Knight is my favorite game ever, and Silksong just topped it. Like, I don't even know how, but I didn't even think it could get any better, but clearly they have. From the very beginning, the very first cutscene, all the way to the end credits, this game is beautiful. The Moss Grotto is a beautiful, calm tutorial area. It's very welcoming, very bright, very vibrant. It's so wonderful, and it's very simple to get into, and then you're just going straight into it with the Marrow and Deep Docks and all those places. Bone Bottom's evolution throughout the game is a story all on its own. Start small, build it up, Skull Tyrant destroys it, rebuild it until it's abandoned. The game is just constantly telling stories throughout the game, and it truly respects your time and effort put into these stories. And I know there are things that I have also missed, and it's also worth going through, really paying attention to these storylines. In all 3 acts, there is genuine payoff for a lot of these things, and it can lead to either some W's or some L's or some just makes me cry or sad or makes me really happy. It makes me do the pog face, all that stuff. Like, for example, the Bell Beast going from a boss fight to your fast travel system to her being gone, and then there's like this big beast called the Bell Eater that, oh god, what happened? And then you beat that boss, and then the Bell Beast comes in, and then it turns out that the Bell Beast is a mom. It's like, Jesus, dude, like the effort that they've put into a lot of these stories, absolutely amazing. You got the Deep Docks. It's a story all on its own. You have the Deep Docks. When you first go through it, it's a pretty linear-ish area. There's a couple branching paths, but as you get more abilities throughout the game, it gets a lot bigger. Even into Act 3, the Deep Docks still is expanding, which is incredible. And like, it's just little details. Like in Act 3, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's why it's called the Deep Docks. I didn't really put 2 and 2 together. But yeah, it's just these massive areas. Other stories, like Sherma starts out as a little pilgrim ringing his lucky chime, rises through the journey with you, you know, is at the Blasted Steps bench just taking a nap there, makes it all the way to Songclave, and then you get this quest saying he's stuck in the White Ward or something, and you start seeing red, and you just rip and tear until it's done. And then in Act 3, he gets the ultimate drip, which is like just the payoffs of these stories. And there's so many little stories throughout the entire game that just have these really fun payoffs. You have the green guy in Sinner's Road. You have just the town of Bellheart evolving. You have Chakra. You have that guy that rides the little snail thing, but he has like the big green hat. I forgot his name, but you know, you have that guy. There's payoffs there. Just all these little details, and it's just, the world is constantly evolving with you. It's not just a game and then where you go from level to level to level. The world is constantly changing as you're progressing, and you go back to these areas not only to get unlockables or stuff, but there's also that reward of getting a storyline progression or some kind of visual treat. That's also something that I appreciated, is I appreciated the sequences in this game. This game had a lot of sequences. And what I mean by that is that these are like scripted events, or like just something really cool that happens in the game that's not that just breaks away from the basic, you know, platforming or combat or boss fight. Yeah, there's just a lot of sequences in this game, which I really appreciate. Some examples are the two in the far fields, and then you have things like the Deep Docks has that sideways moving platform. There's the Abyss Escape. You have snowboarding down Mount Faye, the Red Memory, the Slab Jailbreak, and the fact that there's like all this missable stuff also warrants those second playthroughs. Now, I did have a similar critique of Elden Ring, where the game is too big to have missable or irreversible changes to the map. But I think that was more of a problem with like the fundamentals of like something like my build, which it's really not that deep. But I think, in my opinion, that it's a little bit better done in Silksong, because there's no like fundamentals locked out. There's no like, oh, you can't get this max shard upgrade, or you can't get this tool, or you know, something like that. I think the missable stuff is purely just aesthetics and lore. There is a couple missable bosses, which I think is a bummer. That is a critique of mine, but you know, the most of the stuff that is missable is just cool little things, cool little details, you know. A lot of the criticism is from people getting hard stuck in Hunter's March, not realizing this is a Metroidvania. Like, just go to Deep Docks, and I will talk about the mainline criticisms a little bit more as we go on in this video. Just that, I don't know, I think a lot of the people that are rage quitting the game, but it's like, dude, you're only like in Hunter's March. That's not that far into the game. Like, a lot of people are like, oh man, I put so much time into the game. I got to Hunter's March in like an hour or something. Like, it's not that hard of a game, but we'll go into that a little bit later. It shares a lot of designs with Elden Ring, this game. Most games are very linear. Even Hollow Knight can be like this, and so does Silksong to an extent, but there's also a ton of things to do to get upgrades. You can break some of these bosses in half if you really, really wanted to, and that's kind of the thing, is that a lot of people are like, oh, this game's too hard. It's like, not, like, it can be hard. It definitely can be, and I do appreciate that. But if you really go out of your way to explore the game, find all the tools, find all the upgrades, then you can be overpowered for some of these boss fights. I've seen the Last Judge boss fight get absolutely broken in half, like almost insta-killed. It's actually kind of hilarious. But then you also have the satisfaction of, if you're not using tools or have a lot of upgrades, you have that satisfaction of really learning a move set and really understanding a boss, which is what I did a lot of in my first playthrough. Obviously, there are just some things where it's like, all right, this is very clearly, I'm very clearly not meant to be here yet, so I'm going to get some upgrades. But there is also that flip side where you're later in the game and you're at the later half of Act 2, and there are some bosses that you may have missed in the earlier areas, so you go back and fight those, or you find out about them or something, and then you just absolutely cut them in half, and it's like, Jesus, man, I kind of wanted to learn that fight, because these are some really cool fights. A good example of that is going to be the second Sentinel fight. That is a really good boss fight that I was way overpowered for, so I basically just did it in like 30 seconds almost. I'm like, damn, bro, I kind of wanted to see more of that. But there is that thing that you can appreciate, is that if you are stuck on something, you can go back and get a lot of upgrades. You can do all the quests. The quests give you a lot of stuff, which is really worth your time. And I will critique that the actual quest design can be a little tedious. Like, okay, really, it's like kill and collect quests. Like, all right, dude, come on, man. But the rewards are pretty good. Like, there is the float cloak thing, like the big cloak that makes you look like a goober. That's like, that quest can be a little annoying, but also the reward is pretty worth it. And there's a lot of things like mass shards that are available for quests, or like the spool upgrades. Like, all these things are making you stronger, even if you're not all directly feeling it. So I really like that design. And the world is absolutely beautiful. Like, I think just seeing more of the game is reward enough for me personally. I understand it's like, that's not like a tangible thing, but I think just seeing these areas, and even in Act 3, like you have, oh man, there's this Act 3, it's like I'm in Act 3, and I'm still being blown away with some of the things in this game. Like, you have some of these beautiful, lush green areas, you have the Moss Grotto in Verdania, you have these cool sandy areas like the Blasted Steppes and the Sands of Karak. The Citadel, of course, is just absolutely amazing, and I just want to, on a side note, the Citadel, I am thoroughly impressed with the Citadel. It is hyped up for most of Act 1. It is thoroughly hyped up. Everyone's talking about the Citadel, reaching the Citadel, blah blah blah. And I was kind of expecting something like God of War Ragnarok, where the entire game they're constantly talking about Ragnarok, they're constantly talking about it, and then you get to Ragnarok, the actual event, and it's like 30 minutes long, and it's like, really? The game is called Ragnarok, and the entire game's point is building up to Ragnarok, and then the entire thing plays out in like less than 30 minutes, which was really disappointing, and I was really getting ready for that to be the case in Silksong. But the Citadel is absolutely enormous. It is at least a quarter of the map, if not more, and it has some of the best soundtracks, enemy designs, visual aesthetics, everything, you name it, in all of video games. And it really purely tells a story. It's really well laid out, the entire Citadel, and like just a lot of the story, like the visual storytelling is told masterfully. You have the Coral Chambers, which is absolutely beautiful, the High Halls, the Cogwork Core, all of that stuff. Absolutely incredible. But then you have things like the White Ward and the Underworks, and Bilewater to an extent is absolutely incredible with how these things are pulled off. And just like the visual storytelling of the Citadel and the effects around it. You have the slab just off to the side, which is really cool. Just a lot of things like that I really appreciate. And you just have so much of this stuff. Wisp Thickets, it's just so out of left field, but it's super cool. Bilewater is the skull emoji. That is something I will critique, is that the Poison Swamp area could have been toned down a bit. There's 3 full areas dedicated to the Poison Swamp water mechanic, which is a bit excessive. I get like the visual storytelling. I think Bilewater could have handled all of that. I think Bilewater is a big enough area to have thoroughly gotten the point across, but the fact that you have things like Putrefied Ducks and Sinner's Road, I think got a little excessive. I think the point could have been gotten across is that if you have combined Putrefied Ducks, Sinner's Road, and Bilewater into one area, like, you still have the same concepts, and you could have shrunk it down a little bit, like just a little bit. I think if you had Putrefied Ducks, Sinner's Road, and Bilewater in the size of just Bilewater, I think you could have gotten the point across. It's just Sinner's Road and Putrefied Ducks just gets a little excessive for me with the idea of what they were going for. So then you have just a lot of these other beautiful areas. Mount Faye, absolutely incredible. I just love the variety of areas in this game, and I could constantly go on and on about it. And something I do hope that happens is that the DLCs expand upon the dream sequences that we had. You know, you have the Coral Tower, Verdania, the Carmelita area, and then the Guardian Seth area, that boss over there. All those 4 areas, they're gorgeous. They're absolutely beautiful areas, and it's stunning, but they're only secluded to these small little sections of the game, which I think they could have really expanded upon, or they should expand upon. There is a lot of parts in the trailer, especially with the coral area, that seemingly got cut out of the game, or it's cut content. There's like a barnacle area with like these hermit crab guys. I think that should be expanded upon. I really hope that this stuff is introduced in DLC, actual DLC, not ballooned into another game. I hope to see DLC soon, ish. Of course, these guys just released this insane game. I'm not trying to be like, all right, next week, come on, when's the DLC? You know, but stuff like that. But that kind of cut content could really transform the map, and I think it's a great way to not only just, okay, like we kind of made Farloom, and it wouldn't really make sense if we just bolted it onto the map, but the dream sequences I think are the perfect out, like how you use the needle in. I think that's the perfect out of for the DLC, and I think something like Bile Water or the Putrefied Ducks in the past could have been done really, really well. So those are my thoughts on some of the content. I think is a little bummer, but I think they really should expand upon stuff like that. Like you have the Carmelita area with like this massive ant army, like that's just kind of reduced down to just Hunter's March and a little bit of Farfields. But you know, anyways, so the boss fights in this game are absolutely phenomenal. They're some of the best boss fights in gaming, period, full stop. You have things like the Clockwork Dancers. Like the Clockwork Dancers is my favorite fight in the entire game. Things like the First Sinner, absolutely incredible. Fourth Chorus, Carmelita, Widow, Last Judge, all 3 Lace fights, and of course, Probio, like just to name a few. I'm not even mentioning some of these other bosses just to like save some of the spoilers, but just there's so much fun in this game to be had. There's so many great bosses, like it's just absolutely insane. And Lost Lace has got to be probably the best. Like Lost Lace is mechanically very fun, and then Clockwork Dancers is just like joyously fun. Like you're just like, I just have a smile on my face fighting Clockwork Dancers, and then Lost Lace is just one of those fights where you just go, holy shit, dude, that was insane. Like that was a really fun boss. 2 different types of fun, and I really appreciate that is reflected in the boss design, is that there is different avenues and different routes of fun to be had. It's not just like, okay, this boss is more fun. It is more of a sidestep of fun, if I explain that right. Now I want to go over some of the game's criticisms that I've seen a lot of online. It reminds me a lot of when Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree first came out. You know, people were just trying to bum rush the game and like not pick up any skidoo tree fragments, stuff like that. The main criticisms are the runbacks, rosaries, double damage, and area combat encounters. Those are the main ones that I've seen. If there are more, let me know. Let's go over the first, what I would call real boss in each of the games, False Knight and Bell Beast. Both of these fights do double damage. False Knight has a few rooms of run back. Bell Beast is similar, just like 1 or 2 rooms of run back. Lace and Hornet have a few rooms of run back. Lace has some very well telegraphed double damage hits, and most are 1 mask hits. Same with Hornet, but Hornet doesn't have any double mask hits as far as I know. Mantis Lords has an insane run back through the entire Mantis Village. I feel like everyone forgot this. That's kind of like my main point with these criticisms, is that you have people that are like, oh, I 112%ed Hollow Knight, but Silksong is impossible. It's like, did we play the same game? I feel like just everyone forgot this. I went back and played Hollow Knight right before Silksong came out, and it reminded me a lot of this stuff. Fourth Chorus has like 1 room of run back. Morwing's run back is kind of long, but it's also pretty mindless. Like you can literally just hold left and sprint. It's not that hard. Widow has a decent run back, but it's not mindless, but it's not insane. Sister Splinter has a long run back, and Last Judge is kind of long, and you know, that's like the main one that a lot of people are talking about. And I'm not saying that Silksong doesn't have long runbacks, but I think it's stupid, absolutely ridiculous to forget Hollow Knight had just as many long runbacks. Did we forget the Mantis Lord runback? Did we forget the runback to the Soul Master? Did we forget the runback to the Crystal Guardian? Did we forget the runback to Trader Lord, etc., etc.? Did we forget the runback to the Hive Knight? I'm not saying, in my opinion, either of these games has good or bad runbacks, but I think it's stupid to say the whole, oh, I 112%ed Hollow Knight and these runbacks in Silksong are so bad. Like you played the first game. Did we forget? And same with the double damage. Like, I did agree that the environmental damage, taking 2 masks, was ridiculous. I think there are some areas where it is fitting, but thankfully most of them were patched. But saying the game, but like same thing. I 112% it's Hollow Knight, and it's ridiculous that Silksong has any double damage hits. Like, so did Hollow Knight in the Forgotten Crossroads. There's both the boss and some of the enemies did 2 massive damage. Not that many enemies did do 2 massive damage, and the ones that typically do have very well telegraphed attacks that you should remember. It's not a hack and slash. This is a game where you should respect the combat. And that kind of leads into my next point, is the rosaries. Rosaries are both a good and a bad thing, in my opinion, currently. The one thing that I will agree with is that rosaries and shards should drop from major bosses. But they do also drop from a lot of enemies, and there is a good exploration, so it is good to interact with these enemies instead of just skipping past and running past everything. I think that was kind of the point they were going for, is that you have to respect the combat, is that you're not just, okay, did this boss, run to the next ability or boss, right? Like, that's not what this game is about. That's a speed run, and that's not how you should be playing your first playthrough. You shouldn't just be going boss level, boss level. You should explore. You should really find these nooks and crannies where there's rosary strings, enemies drop rosaries, and you're not gonna clean out the bone bottom vendor in the first hour of the game. There's so many rosary clumps and strings, and it's very punishing to lose a lot of these rosaries, so that should be your incentive to keep spending, whether it's on benches, maps, or if you have a surplus, then you can go to the vendors and buy some stuff. But again, did you really think you were going to clear out a vendor? When you first showed up to Belheart, you're like, oh, I'm going to buy everything here. It is a little bit ridiculous. Later in the game, when you get to the Citadel, you can get a bunch of rosaries by farming the top area of the Coral Chambers. And then the final critique I saw was the excessive amount of area combat encounters. It can be a bit excessive, but I think the only places where it is ridiculous is the high halls and the Coral Tower. But other than that, I think it's interesting to see the different combinations of combat encounters that each enemy can provide. The enemies in this game are very well designed. There are some that are super strong, that are tanky, and then there's some that are popcorn enemies where they don't have a lot of health, but they kind of sit in the back, or they dodge away from you and just pelt you. It's super annoying, but you have that combination of enemies where you kind of, let's agree that this enemy on flat ground is not that hard to fight. You can literally just fight them, right? But when you're in these arenas, they can either drop the floor, or they can lower the ceiling, or they can do things like introduce other enemies in a tight space, that kind of thing. That's where you really get that good combination of enemies, and really, even with enemies, you read their telegraphs and you learn their patterns, right? It's not just with bosses, right? That's what they were going for with the arena combats. There are a couple where I'm like, okay, either this could have been a boss, or this feels like a boss coming up, or just something other, rather. Just the High Halls one, I didn't even mind the High Halls one. It's just the very last wave is just so brutally punishing, and it is a long one. I think if that gets adjusted in any way, I'll be very interested to see how, because that is a very big roadblock, in my opinion, where you are very much required to either go back, get some more mass shards, get some more healing upgrades, get some more tools, stuff like that. And there are some tools that can make it a lot easier. You can steamroll even the High Halls room in half. You can break that fight, just absolutely destroy it. But I can't understand when you get to that wave and you see the 2 big guys on either end of you, you go, what the fuck, man? I can definitely understand the frustration with that. And then also with Coral Tower is very excessive with 3 full gauntlets with no checkpoint. I think that is a little ridiculous. There's the 3 full gauntlets, and then you get a shortcut. I think there should be a shortcut after either the second one or just after every one. I think it's a little ridiculous. But when you finally get that shortcut unlocked, and then there's that final gauntlet into the boss fight, I think that's pretty okay. Just the 3 in a row was brutal. But it is kind of okay by the fact that you don't use any tool shards when you're in these dream sequences. So again, just use some tools and you could break them in half. Now, a couple things I want to tack on here at the very end is the soundtrack goes berserk. I can't believe this soundtrack. It is absolutely incredible. So there's so many good tracks: Cogwork Core, Cogwork Dancers, Choral Chambers. You know, you have other places like the Lost Lace fight, the Grandmother Silk fight. It's just, there's so many good tracks in this game. It just floors me, and I'll pay attention to a new one every single time. You have the dive, the last dive, things like that. Incredible. And even Bilewater's music is incredible. So let's just go over my favorites, least favorites, easiest, worst, best, hardest, stuff like that. So my favorite boss in the game is Lost Lace. It is an absolutely incredible fight, and the music just goes absolutely pops off in there. The aesthetic is beautiful, and just the moveset is beautiful. Probably my least favorite fight would have to be Plasmified Zango. It doesn't even really feel like a boss, but if we're talking about like what I would say like is the mainline bosses, currently I would have to say Grohl the Great, and that's just purely because of, you know, you have things like the run back, and you have things like the arena before it, and the fucking piss water that you can accidentally step in, which is why I would hope that there's going to be a God Home-esque DLC in this game, because I want to fight these bosses again, maybe in a more confined area where you have no run back, things like that. I think that would be absolutely amazing to see how things like Grohl the Great and other things like other bosses like Voltworm or something like that would stack up in these rankings. I would hope for that. My favorite area in the game is Cogwork Core. It is the combination of a really fun platforming section, and you have the music is absolutely, it pops off. Like this soundtrack is amazing. It is purely a like platforming area. I think there could have been a good boss fight in here. There is Cogwork Dancers, but maybe more of like a pinnacle, like when you're done with Cogwork Core, maybe that could have been a thing. I'm not entirely sure. But Cogwork Dancers is absolutely wonderful. And then you have that platforming section that you need to go through to get one of the melodies, which is absolutely wonderful. The easiest boss in the game for me was Second Sentinel. So how I would classify easy bosses is, obviously, if it was like the basic definition, it would be the Moss Mother, because it has the easiest moveset. But I think easiest would be more defined in like what kind of area it is. So obviously Moss Mother is in the very start of the game, so of course it's going to be easy. But when you have later game areas, and it was a very close call between Second Sentinel and Voltworm, these areas are very late game areas, but I first tried both of these. So Second Sentinel, I think, would be what I would classify the easiest, because you would think, oh, it's going to be a really hard boss fight, but the fact that I still first tried it was absolutely insane. So I think I have to go back and fight it again, maybe this time. Maybe I'll try to be a bit underpowered. We'll see. So that is my easiest boss. And then the hardest boss absolutely is Lost Lace. Now, a lot of bosses in this game took me an hour or more, and that is a good qualifier for difficulty, but Lost Lace also took me about an hour, and that is already building on top of pre-existing boss fight mechanics. I already know Lace's moveset, but even with knowing Lace's moveset, and it still took me an hour or more to beat Lost Lace, I think is insane, because when you have things like Carmelita, First Sinner, Last Judge, things like that. Those are brand new bosses with their brand new moveset. Even the second Lace fight, you could say, is probably a harder boss. Things like that. These are brand new movesets that you have to learn. But Lace and Lost Lace, you already know Lace's moveset. So when you go into Lost Lace and you try to build off of Lace 2's moveset, there is still that difficulty in the game. So that's why I say Lost Lace is the hardest boss in the game. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I am so stoked that Silksong's out. I'm just gonna keep playing it, and I don't think I'm gonna get bored anytime soon. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.